She smiled and said, "Oops, looks like we forgot your ticket. Maybe next time." And just like that, my $33,000 vacation vanished at JFK Airport. My name is Margaret Hayes, 67 years old, widow, retired teacher. And until that morning, a woman who believed she had already survived every kind of betrayal life could throw at her. But there, under the cold fluorescent lights of the departure hall, my daughter-in-law's voice cut through me like a blade dipped in sugar. Vanessa stood with perfect posture, the kind of woman who could turn cruelty into performance art. Her lipstick didn't even smudge when she delivered the line that ended years of blind generosity. Beside her, my son Daniel stared down at the tile floor, pretending his shoelace had come undone. My two grandchildren hovered nearby, thumbs tapping nervously on their phones, desperate not to meet my eyes. I waited for someone to laugh to tell me this was a misunderstanding. Instead, Vanessa adjusted her designer scarf and waved her boarding pass at the gate agent. "You understand, right, Margaret? These things happen. We'll sort it out later." The crowd moved forward. The sound of suitcase wheels and boarding calls filled the air, and still I stood there clutching my passport and a folder of receipts. The receipts were the worst part, proof that I had paid for everything: 5 business-class tickets to Paris, 8 nights at a boutique hotel, along the Seine, private tours, restaurant reservations, the works. $33,000 of memories that were never meant to include me. Daniel mumbled something about checking with the airline, but his voice cracked halfway through. He didn't check anything. He followed his wife through the gate, head low like a man already ashamed of the story his children would remember. The gate closed. My phone buzzed once, an automated confirmation for a flight I wasn't on. Around me, happy families hugged and laughed, their excitement echoing off the walls. Mine was boarding a plane built on deceit. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was intimate, bone deep, the kind that comes only from people who know exactly where your heart lives and choose to step on it anyway. By the time the plane lifted off for Paris, I was still standing there, a 67-year-old woman with a useless boarding pass and a lifetime of lessons that had apparently taught me nothing. But somewhere beneath the humiliation, something small and fierce began to stir. If they thought they could erase me that easily, they were about to learn they'd underestimated the wrong grandmother. When I think back now, the warning signs were there all along, glowing like hazard lights I was too sentimental to notice. It started 3 months before that miserable morning at JFK. Daniel had called me on a quiet Sunday afternoon. His voice was warm, thoughtful, in a way that reminded me of the boy he used to be. "Mom," he said, "let's make some memories before the kids get too old. Emily's starting college soon and Ethan's growing up fast. Let's do something special together." Those words lit something in me. After losing my husband, the house had grown too quiet, too orderly, too full of echoes. The idea of a family trip felt like oxygen. When Daniel mentioned Paris, my heart jumped. Paris was where Robert and I had dreamed of retiring someday, a dream that died with him. So yes, I wanted to go. I wanted to feel alive again, surrounded by my family. Daniel hesitated before mentioning the price. "It's not cheap, Mom. Vanessa's been looking at flights and hotels and, well, if you could help a little, we could make it happen." I didn't even blink. "Don't worry about it, sweetheart. I'll take care of everything." Vanessa took charge immediately. She was always so confident, always the planner. "Leave everything to me, Margaret. I'll handle the bookings, the hotels, the tours, everything. It'll be perfect." She sounded so sure of herself that I never questioned handing over my credit card details, my passport copy, my email address for confirmations. After all, she'd managed family vacations before. What could go wrong? But slowly, something began to feel off. Every time I tried to ask simple questions, "What hotel are we staying at? What airline did you choose?" she brushed me off with that polished smile. "Don't worry, Margaret, it's a surprise, you'll love it." A surprise. That word started to taste bitter. Weeks passed. I'd mention packing or ask if we needed travel insurance and she'd change the subject. "You just focus on enjoying yourself," she'd say. I told myself she was being kind, taking work off my shoulders. That's what good daughters-in-law do, right? Then came the moment that shattered the illusion. I was at the mall, arms full of shopping bags, hunting for a warm coat for Paris. As I passed the food court, I heard a familiar "Lao." "I still can't believe you're really doing this," she said. "It's cruel even for you." Vanessa laughed, a sharp, hollow sound that didn't belong in a public place. "She'll get over it. Money doesn't buy you a seat at the table." I froze. The noise of the mall faded until all I could hear was my own heartbeat. Those words, each one, like a nail being hammered into the truth I hadn't wanted to face. That night, I told myself I must have misheard, because the alternative was too painful to admit that the people I loved most saw me not as family, but as a walking wallet with feelings. And yet deep down, I knew. I just wasn't ready to believe it. I didn't cry, not one tear. When the reality sank in, I went home, made myself a cup of tea, and opened my laptop. There's a kind of calm that comes right after devastation, the silence before the storm you're about to unleash. Every booking, every flight, hotel, and tour had been made under my name with my credit card. I'd trusted Vanessa to manage the details, but the paper trail belonged entirely to me. It was almost poetic. I started with the hotel. A polite French woman answered the phone. "Bonjour, Madame Hayes. How may I assist you?" "Yes," I said, steady and clear. "Please cancel my reservation." She confirmed it with cheerful efficiency. Full refund process to the original card within 3 business days. Then came the airline. That one took longer, endless hold music transfers and explanations. But eventually the representative said, "Mrs. Hayes, I can issue a partial refund after the cancellation fee. Even after the penalty, nearly $14,000 came back to me." Next were the tour's private Louvre guide river cruise on the Seine day trip to Versailles. One by one, I canceled them all. By the time I shut my laptop that evening, almost $30,000 had been returned to the card I'd used to pay. And then I wrote the note. Short, simple, sharp enough to draw blood. "Since you didn't want me on this trip, I assumed you didn't want my money there either." I printed it on my best stationery, folded it neatly, and the next day as they bustled through security, I slipped it into Vanessa's makeup bag. It took less than 30 seconds. Then I waited. At 3 in the morning, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. "Mom, there's been a mistake with the hotel. A few minutes later, the flights are canceled. The reservations are all gone. What's happening?" The messages came faster. Confusion, panic, then pleading. Daniel called. I let it ring. Vanessa sent a long text full of half-baked excuses and faux concern. I turned off the sound, walked to the kitchen, and made pancakes from scratch. Butter, maple syrup, the whole thing. I ate every bite slowly and smiled for the first time in years. Revenge isn't sweet, it's peaceful. It tastes like quiet satisfaction and a clean conscience. But even as that peace settled over me, guilt crept in around the edges. When the hotel phone rang hours later, and I heard my granddaughter Emily's trembling voice, that guilt hit hard. Grandma, Dad's yelling, Mom's crying. What's going on? Did something happen to our hotel? I took a deep breath. Emily, sweetheart, your parents left me at the airport after I paid for everything. Silence stretched across the line. I could almost hear her processing it, the quick intake of breath, the tiny shift from confusion to clarity. Finally, she whispered, "She said you didn't want to come." She lied. Those 4 words landed with more power than any argument ever could. For the first time, someone from the next generation saw what I'd been too kind or too blind to confront for years. That moment wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth, finally finding its way into the light. 3 days later, the phone rang just as I was trimming roses in the backyard. A man with a polite French accent introduced himself. Madame Hayes. "This is Inspector Dubois from the Paris Police Prefecture. I'm calling about your family. My knees went weak. I thought there'd been an accident." "Are they hurt?" I asked. "Non, madame. They are detained. The hotel reports they attempted to leave without paying their bill, €2,000. For a moment, I couldn't find my voice. My son, his wife, and my grandchildren sitting in a Paris police station over a hotel tab. It was absurd, and yet somehow perfectly in line with everything that had come before. The inspector continued, "They cannot be released until the debt is settled. Would you like to arrange payment?" I wanted to say no. God knows they deserve to face the consequences. But then I pictured Emily and Ethan exhausted, frightened, stuck in a foreign country because of their parents' greed. The anger in me gave way to something older, softer motherhood. "Yes," I said quietly, "I'll pay the bill." I made it clear I would only cover the basics room charges, nothing more. When the call ended, I sat there for a long time, staring out the window. I knew exactly what I'd done. I hadn't saved Daniel and Vanessa. I'd saved the kids. When they finally flew home, Daniel called to ask if they could come by. I agreed, but I wasn't the same woman they'd left at the airport. They arrived looking worn down. Daniel's eyes were rimmed red. Vanessa's usual gloss had cracked. We sat in the living room where every family holiday had once begun, and I placed a folder on the coffee table. "Let's talk numbers," I said. Inside the folder were 5 years' worth of bank transfers, checks, and receipts over $200,000 in mortgage payments, car loans, private school tuition, emergency funds, and little favors that had added up to a mountain of quiet generosity. I looked directly at my son. "That's what I've spent helping your family. I did it out of love. But love has limits." Then I laid out the new rules one by one, like a judge reading a verdict. "No more money for the house, the car, or your emergencies. You are both removed from my will. The only inheritance I'm leaving is an education trust for Emily and Ethan locked tight, so neither of you can touch a cent." For a heartbeat, the room was silent except for the sound of Vanessa's quick breathing. Then she exploded. "You're destroying this family. Do you have any idea what you've put us through?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "No, Vanessa," I said evenly. "I'm saving what's left of it." Daniel lowered his head, shame finally catching up with him. Vanessa grabbed her purse and stormed out. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the picture frames, but I stayed still. For the first time in years, I felt something powerful, peace, mixed with freedom. The kind that comes when you finally draw a line and decide never to erase it again. 6 months later, I sat in my garden with the morning sun warming my shoulders and a letter trembling in my hands. The handwriting on the envelope was familiar, round, and hurried, like someone who had more to say than the lines could hold. It was from Emily, my granddaughter, now a freshman in college. "Grandma," she wrote, "I learned what real strength looks like from you. Thank you for showing me that standing up for yourself isn't the same as giving up on love." I read that sentence over and over until the words blurred. The sound of birds, the wind brushing through the tulips, it all felt softer somehow. For the first time in years, peace didn't feel like something I had to earn. It just existed. Daniel was doing better. After everything fell apart, he sold the big house, the one my money had quietly helped keep afloat, and downsized to a small apartment near his office. He'd started managing his own finances, cooking for the kids, and I think confronting the man he'd become under Vanessa's influence. Every Sunday he calls. Sometimes we talk about the weather, sometimes about the kids. There's guilt in his voice still, but also something new, humility. I never rub salt in old wounds. He's already learned enough from the scar. As for Vanessa, she vanished. No calls, no texts, not even a goodbye. For a long time, that silence would have gutted me. I used to think losing family meant losing a part of myself. But now I understand that peace often arrives disguised as absence. The quiet after the storm isn't empty, it's healing. These past 6 months have taught me lessons I should have learned decades ago. I learned that kindness without boundaries becomes a trap, and generosity when offered without respect turns into currency for manipulation. I learned that love isn't a transaction. It doesn't need proof in the form of money gifts or endless forgiveness. And I learned that saying no doesn't make you cruel. It makes you free. I used to believe that keeping my family close meant holding them up even when they were leaning too hard. But true closeness, I realized, comes when everyone stands on their own 2 feet. When you stop being the safety net, people finally learn to fly or fall on their own. When I finished reading Emily's letter, I placed it gently on the table beside my tea. The garden around me was alive tulips, hydrangeas, and a small oak tree I planted the year Robert passed away. Everything had grown stronger with time, just like me. The woman who once confused love with obligation had finally let both breathe. If you're listening and you see a little of yourself in this story, please remember this. You are allowed to say no, even to the people you love most. Boundaries don't break families. They reveal who's willing to love you without conditions. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever rebuilt yourself after being betrayed, share your story in the comments. Let's remind each other that resilience isn't loud, it's steady like a heartbeat that refuses to quit. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and follow Real Her Stories for more true stories about women who've chosen strength over guilt, peace over chaos, and self-respect over silence. Because sometimes saying enough is the most loving thing you can ever do.